First, get really clear on what you're trying to get out of the path change, and then write a plan to achieve those goals, right? That's the needle that you're trying to thread. You want to find that perfect thread of like maybe just doing one really good deal in your area of focus. That's kind of the sweet spot, I think.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Travel Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we're so pleased to have Ryan Gibson on with us. Ryan?
Such a pleasure to have me. Thank you so much, everybody.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you again for being on the Road Less Travel Show. Well, to start with, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background, what career you initially started in, and how long you were on that path?
Yeah, so about 17 years ago, I was hired as an airline pilot and had a great career flying. A little bumpy on the 9/11 and recession, but overall just really enjoyed what I did, and also had a career as a consultant for the FAA, and did a lot of regulatory consulting and regulatory affairs in Washington, D.C. for a number of times, and just really enjoyed that. And also had the pleasure of being a check airman, simulator instructor, and doing a lot more for the airline, such as being a regional chief pilot for a couple of years, and being involved in more of the operations of the business as well. So really just had a lot of fun doing that, and still obviously enjoy flying. Still do some small plane flying today, and try to stay plugged in. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And then what did you transition into?
So we started a business in 2014, late 2013, early 2014, of investing in real estate. We grew a commercial real estate portfolio and built a real estate business that does self-storage investing around the country. We have about 55 or so self-storage facilities, primarily in the Southeast United States and Texas, and the Carolinas, Wisconsin, Colorado, and the Pacific Northwest. And we do all the operations of property management now, and we do all the construction of these facilities as well.
Okay, excellent. And Ryan, you guys, for Spartan, you guys buy existing and then you also develop. Is that correct? Both
Correct. Yeah. So we do about one ground up development per year, typically on the average. Most of what we buy are existing self-storage facilities. A lot of them come with vacant room to expand. So we do quite a number of expansions on existing facilities. But as far as like a greenfield or raw land development of something that doesn't exist, we do a little bit less frequent.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So Ryan, as you look back to your aviation days, is there a funny story you can share? Something that happened to you along the way that kind of made you scratch your head? It's like, oh man, why am I doing this?
Yes, the very first layover. It's funny. I was selling Cutco knives to pay for all of my flight training. That's how I scrounged up enough money to pay for my flight training in cash. I was a senior in high school, doing 9-10 knife appointments every day, and I was one of the top sales reps for Cutco at the time. Yeah, in the Midwest that summer. So I had a lot of fun doing that, and basically turned. I love being able to kind of schedule and make calls and book appointments and sort of design my life. Although as a salesperson, obviously you can pick your schedule, but you're working all the time. So it's not really much of a schedule. But basically I used all that cash to pay for flying, and just highly motivated, graduated from college a year early, just really wanted to be an airline pilot, worked tirelessly to get my ratings while I was in high school and college. And I was 21 when I got hired by the airlines.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the feeling of, the pride that I had, just putting on the uniform, flying my first airline flight. And one of my first layovers was in White Plains, New York, which is, you're laughing, Bill, exactly. You've been there a few times. Oh yeah.
I've been there too. Yeah.
And I'll just remember, how fun it was, getting in that jet and flying to the layover. And I just remember, I'll never forget the feeling the next morning. I was in the hotel. I wake up and I'm like, I have 17 hours to sit here, in my layover. And, you get your workout in, you go get some breakfast and things like that. And I'm like, what else can I do with my time? I'm not the type of person that likes watching grass grow, as many people can relate to those who know me. And so my mind just started just racing, can I find a job on my layovers? And that was kind of before work from home was like a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just was constantly thinking like, what can I do to take up this time on the layovers? Because I can't sit still. And so, my first thing that I did was I did pilot crash pads, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So I set up a couple of crash pads around Philadelphia airport and around the Washington, D.C. airport. And without even really knowing it, I was in real estate, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically subletting apartments and then renting them out to multiple pilots who needed a place to crash before their trip started. Hence the word crash pad, kind of Airbnb before Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was very transactional. It was very difficult to do. Obviously, you've got to collect checks of dozens and dozens of people every month. So it gets a little bit tedious, but that was kind of my first thing. And then when I got hired as a consultant by the FAA, I thought that was a really neat thing. When there was a big airline crash in 2009 that had wide sweeping regulatory changes in the industry. And I was right there in Washington, D.C., helping a lot of those aviation rulemaking committees assemble and write the final reports for the FAA to change regulations. Specifically, flight and duty time hours changed and the qualifications to be an airline pilot changed. And I was at the forefront of all those things. So it was really exciting, but it wasn't until I read that cash flow quadrant by Kiyosaki and I realized, I have been doing E and S really well. I've been an employee and I've been self-employed, but without just grinding away at 90 hours a week, I wasn't really getting passive income.
Yep.
So when the real estate opportunity came into play and I met my neighbor, Scott Lewis in DC, I started realizing, okay, now I can move over to the B quadrant and eventually be in the I quadrant where I could replace my time, have my money work for me instead of me working for it all the time. And so that was really kind of the epiphany that I had, catapulting out of that first layover and going on this journey of what else can I do and how else can I use my brain and stretch. And can I just give one more story about it? Because I really,
please.
First airline I got hired at 21, it was the year 2005. And a lot of airlines had just laid off.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a great time. And the regionals were starting to pick up a lot of the mainline feed as a cost savings measure. And so I was part of those regional airline pilots that got hired at that time. There was somebody who was 58 and a half years old in my class. And that was eye-opening because he was the number one guy at his airline that went under. And he had his kids in private schools. He was, just on the top of the world. And all of a sudden he's in class with me. He has the same seniority as a 21-year-old. And I know how much he was making because everybody makes the same the first year in the airlines. And I was like, I think I need to put another couple irons in the fire here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is crazy, right? I mean, like you can't think of any other profession, really, Ryan, that you spend that much time, effort, ratings, accreditation, all that you put into that. And then, like you said, through no fault of your own, the business goes at it and you go from number one on the senior list, making, $400,000 or $500,000 a year to $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a dentist, a doctor, you can go change practices, whatever it is, but an attorney, but not going to have that issue. But yeah, in aviation, for the amount of specific education and training you have to do to be always in limbo, like you said, you realize that early though, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I always, the American Airlines captain, turned around and when I was in my first jump seat, and he says to me, he goes, 2 ways you're going to make it. Put money in your 401k and don't get divorced,
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of joked. He's like, well, and you got to have a lot of, it's good to have irons in the fire. And that guy was in the Guard. So he was doing both the National Guard and he was doing, the airlines. So he kind of had two things going on. I think he had some rental properties as well. So I think that's really what sparked it. And then I just realized that I just had such a bigger passion for real estate than I did for aviation in any ways. And I could still do, fulfill my desire to fly without the need to work full time in the airlines.
Right.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, what was kind of, you talked about like the initial and some of the freedom of time and was there a deciding point that you decided that, okay, this is when I'm going to make the full-time transition into real estate? How'd that come about? It sounded like it was kind of gradual over time as you build up to more and more, your time was more required in that one side of the equation?
Kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I think that I hate to say it, but that's really, if I was single and had no family and it wouldn't mind, being gone on the weekends and working all week in the business, like fine, if I wanted to have no other hobbies or other time spent, it would be okay to juggle both. I think you can perfectly find it to juggle both, but having a spouse that works and having kids and being, working full time in real estate and then being, a pilot, it just is not, it's just not a great position to put yourself into and your family into. So I think really that's kind of what changed things. The other thing too is, it really just boiled down to asking myself, do I love what I'm doing enough to want to do it for free? Because my time was more valuable somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so when I put the time on the flying versus the time that I could spend building the business, it was very clear that financially it would make a lot more sense to just focus on the business. And we also scaled to over 100 employees. So I need to be here for my team. And even though it might be a trip every month or every other month or something, it's still just not enough. Couple that with the fact that the airlines are having massive shortages right now of pilots. The flexibility has dried up to be flexible with the schedule. So I just want to be committed to what I'm doing. And that's really what drove me to kind of make the change.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. I mean, the real time constraints and, time, with your family, like you said, you won't get back, right? I mean, it's
exactly
one shot going through that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. So Ryan, as you think back, maybe it was when you and Scott were first getting Spartan going, anything like that? Were there some obstacles you had to initially overcome?
All kinds of obstacles. It was a challenge working two jobs and transitioning. Mm-hmm. That was definitely very challenging. I would say the major challenge though is when you're trying to set your mission, vision, values, and build your company and all that, it gets pretty distracting to just want to do deals. Mm-hmm. And I would say that was one of my challenges, is that I was focused on the deal and not growing the business enough. And if I could go back in time, that was probably where I would, focus the efforts, is, just on being a little less transactional with doing projects and being more focused on, what the company's all about and where it's going to go. And I think that was a big challenge that Scott and I both had. Scott was being more on the company side, more to building the company side, and less on the deal transaction side. So that was something that we struggled with, that we kind of overcame over the past, 9 years now, I guess we've been working together. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what was it, as you look back, what was one of your first victories as a company you guys had that you solidified the fact that this is a viable option we can grow this into a full scale business?
Yeah, I just think when you get to the point where you have monthly reoccurring revenue, monthly reoccurring cash flow that supports a payroll, I think that's mm-hmm. kind of where you have that epiphany, where you're thinking in terms of assets under management and the cash flow that those assets produce, and being able to build a staff and hire high quality people. And also likewise, when you do a project where you're not razor thin on your budget because you're hiring local contractors that, scatter in a moment's notice. And it's really frustrating for you. It's frustrating for your timelines and your investors. I think that's really something that is, that was very impactful, and one of the first development deals that we did in storage allowed us to hire truly the best contractor, the best architect, design, civil engineering firm, and just having the resources to work with really good people was just a game changer. It allowed us the project, I'll never forget the first few flips that we did, and just the chasing around of the contractors that took place, because you're just trying to hire the cheap guy, right? That can get it done and kind of sells you on it. But then you realize when you get into commercial real estate and larger developments that it's not about the cheap guy. And in fact, you run the opposite direction from the cheap mm-hmm. guy. You hire somebody who's really well vetted and qualified, not necessarily the most expensive, but the most in line and the most capable. And then you do things like making sure they have enough excavators and talent and people and track record. And I think it's just such a more enjoyable experience going through that, because then all of a sudden you can build 110,000 square feet of storage in the time that it took you to build a 4,000 square foot house, maybe even faster, with less trips to the property and less oversight. So it really is a game changer when you can kind of think bigger and scale and really start to benefit from that scale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So Ryan, in your Spartan days, is there something humorous that's happened to you along the way that you can share?
Let's see, something humorous. Lots of things. Lots of things. Well, we got hit by an F1 tornado at one of our properties. That was not funny, but
dark humor. Yeah.
little dark humor.
Yeah.
No, I think just every day we have challenges like that, and I think you just got to not make light of them, but just make sure that you keep a good, cool, calm, collected attitude about just, you're going to have things go wrong. You have to be ready for it. And when it does go wrong, you've got to be able to just, posture and be in a good position to handle it. And I think that's
right.
Anybody who's getting into that. I mean, and so when you talk about like something comical or something, whatever, I mean, it's not that we joke with it, but it's just that you have to have a good, headspace for that. Because things are going to happen and things are going to go wrong, and you just got to be ready to manage through those challenges. As far as I would probably say it's just amazing. It's entertaining of how small the space is and how connected we all are. I would say that's pretty comical in some cases. Like I just had a call with a investment shop that is considering investing in one of our projects. And like they knew the seller of our property and had invested in one of his projects, on a property that we bought. And it's just like, it's just such a small space, I think. And I think it's mind blowing how tightly connected a lot of this stuff really is and how close we are. So
absolutely. I mean, we're doing some marketing efforts, and we are engaging a company, and they shared a sample with us, without revealing the details. But anyway, they shared a sample with us, and it turned out it was a property that we actually had lost the bid on a couple of years ago. I'm like, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. It's so like, it's amazing just how connected this whole thing is. And it's kind of entertaining. I can't remember, there was another specific example this week, but I can't remember exactly the details of it, but just where somebody knows you. Oh, I know what it was. It was somebody who I met in Seattle who was went to a school with somebody who's one of my investors in a completely different part of the country. And it's like, oh yeah, I know. And I saw he was connected to this person, and it was a very, normally when you looked at LinkedIn or Facebook, you kind of see who you're connected to, and and you're sort of like, oh, that makes sense. Like all these people are in real estate, or all these people are, worked at, this airline with me or whatever. But then you see this like outlier, and you're like, how do you know that guy? And it's just completely random. They went to high school together in a place, in Indiana. And they know each other that way. So anyway, just kind of a funny coincidence. So,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, where are you today in your journey? You guys have mentioned, like, since you and Scott met, you've grown this over 100 employees now. So kind of where are you today, and what's the future look like for your company?
Yeah, we have a little over 500 million in assets under management. And our construction company is got multiple projects, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, currently in Texas, where they're doing expansions at properties. So they're really going on, and they're actually just pivoting. They're actually offering construction services now for external clients, which is great. So our construction platform has grown out really, really well. Property operations is really staffing up and kind of growing and building as well. And then as far as capital raising goes, we've raised about 250 million in equity to date. And we've started to really build out our sales team in our investor relations services department to handle all of the investors that we have and also onboard new ones. So that's kind of where we are today. And then, like I said earlier, I think we have about 55 self-storage facilities. We'll probably end the year with about 60 or 62, depending on, what closes by the new year. And we're looking to really continue to build our portfolio. We want to be at $1 billion by the end of next year. And then also, we really want to continue to grow and scale the different verticals that we have, like property management, construction management, all the assets that we have under management, and then continue to build our team to be, to service the assets and our investors to our best of our ability. So where we are now, and we're just about to rewrite our strategic plan for the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for that planning process, because we usually roadmap where we want to get to and where we want to go every 3 years, and our strategic plan ends at the end of 2022. So
okay,
very nice, very nice.
Yeah,
it's a great goal. I mean, that's a doubling of the company in the next year, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we have some stuff in the pipeline we're working on that would solidify the remaining purchases actually already of 2023. So pretty excited about that.
Very nice. Wow.
Yeah. Outstanding.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Ryan, as you're operating and Spartan's growing, that's awesome. Great opportunities ahead of you. Perhaps personally, perhaps through the company, is there anything you can share that you guys do to give back help others in some way? So
I wouldn't say there's a specific charity or a specific function or one thing that we do every year or some big gala that we put on. We look to do it every single day. Our mission statement is to improve lives through real estate. So great example, there's the Hurricane Ian that just hit, Florida. And, our lender is being really gracious with us. We're actually buying a property in Bonita Springs. One thing that we do is, when we talk to the lender, we're going to donate to his employees relief fund. And is this the right thing to do? I donate flights to charities every year. Just got back, I took a aspiring real estate developer to one of our development sites, and, free of charge. And I spent the day with them and raised thousands of dollars for a local, homeless charity. Very nice. Just auctioned off actually 3 more flights at the QuestCon to do the same thing for one of their charitable foundations. So and then we do a give back day as a company. So all of our employees are paid, full days pay and allowed to go work for something. They did the Colorado Trail Association. They had the team went out, the construction team went out and did some manual labor for the day and,
nice.
Rebuilt some of the Colorado trails. The entire Seattle office, we went down to a food packaging and delivery for solving the homeless or the hunger crisis that we have. And we volunteered the whole day, packaging food. It was actually kind of fun. It turned into a little bit of a competition among teams who could you had to take all this food and sort it all into these boxes so they could, distribute it across the state of Washington. And we just, anything that we can do to kind of give back. The other thing too is education meetups, just the same thing that you guys are doing this with this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when people ask me like, what was your educational background in this stuff? And I was like, I just learned about all this stuff, through podcasts and education and conferences and just, meeting a guy like Bill or something and saying, hey, what are you doing? And what are you working on? And I think that kind of giving back is so important to help people get to their financial goals. And we do a meetup every month at our office that goes out on Zoom, and we bring in guests that are from different aspects of the space. And then we also do a weekly newsletter to educate people on the storage industry. So we try to get back, both, kind of in the communities that we're serving, and then also education wise to our kind of real estate background.
That's great. You guys do a lot. That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Richard and I are also, like you're saying, Ryan, firm believers in that. Somebody helped us when we were getting started, and kind of led you along. And, the same thing, we do meetup groups and, the podcast, obviously, like you do. I think it's wonderful, help the next group come along. And it's, it's a great way to, like I said, not only give back, but improve lives, their lives and the people they'll work with. So I think it has a lot of downstream of good effects.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, was there something you've recently implemented in your business that's helped you grow and scale as you're scaling at a rapid rate? Is there some kind of system or procedures or your vision? How you?
Yeah. So I'll just say this: you can never have enough communication, and when you grow to 100 people, now you have an exponential additional lines of communication that grow in the company, and so I would just not overlook communicating. And so, Microsoft Teams or Zoom or WhatsApp, or whatever your technology platform does is, just when you're scaling, make sure that you've got a plan to communicate. Right. And people need to be communicated usually 5 different times in different modalities to like actually have the message sink in. So as a leader, that's something that I've really learned is like we have an all hands meeting every week, and like we could say something in that meeting, but let's say only 70% of the people hear it and absorb it. The other 30%, they weren't paying attention for that moment and they missed it. So that's why you have the email that comes out also reiterating that communication. But then somebody didn't check their email, right? So then that person didn't miss it, right? Or that person missed it. So then you have a departmental meeting and you go over the things that you've already communicated to, and just that kind of communication cascade, just making sure you're telling your team 5 times, over communicating something, I think has been very, very impactful and important if you're running a bigger organization than just you and your partner. And now you've got more people, and you just, in your mind, you've assumed that they all understood and heard something that maybe you didn't even say, but like in your mind, you know exactly what's going on, but they don't, because you didn't say anything and you didn't get it in writing. So I think that has been a huge, just eye opener for us, is just, you can't have enough communication in your organization, period.
That's so true. Just because you send a message doesn't mean it was received. Yep.
I love it. Yeah.
And
an email. I mean, I'm sure you get 200-300 emails a day, right? So it's so easy to get somewhere in the bottom of the list. You meant to get back to it. And yeah, absolutely.
And, you also have to tell your employees that, they have to be aggressive, like if something isn't working or they're just feel like they're screaming into a void, they have to speak up. And a lot of people don't want to ruffle feathers or step on toes. So there's a lot of things that you can do just to make sure that people feel empowered to speak up about a certain particular topic. So.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Ryan, what advice would you give somebody who's considering making a path change?
Yeah, I would say first get really clear on what you're trying to get out of the path change. Like what does the other side look like? And as a means to what you want to get out of, like, what are you expecting to get out of the career path change, and what are your goals in it? And then write a plan to achieve those goals. And usually it can be like a strategic plan. You can go download our strategic plan on our website. It's right on the front page. Anybody can download it. But like, write out what you want to do, write out what you want this career path change to be, and then hold yourself accountable to it. And, some people like to just rip the Band-Aid off and just jump tracks and just quit their jobs and go full bore. That's not me. Bill, it's great to have, I like to have alternate airports, when I'm flying to my destination, right? Or at least know that I can go there, I can go there. Right. So like having, like, just quitting your job is, especially if you've been very dedicated to, like, medical profession or aviation or legal, it's hard to just pull the ripcord and just jump. Right. So I would say, lay a roadmap on there and just make sure there's a ton of things in there about educating yourself, to take action. And so some people might say, well, there's too many times people like overanalyze and they think about, I got to take all these classes and I'm not ready yet and the market's bad and all that. That could be true. Just make sure that your education is being effective for action, so you can actually act upon what you're learning, because that's really where you start learning, is when you actually start doing investments. So I think that's really an important balance to get right. And I think that's the hardest thing that people struggle with, is when they think about another path, they're so obsessed with just being perfect about it. And they just don't take enough action. But then also they're balancing, it sucks when you do a bad deal, because you're stuck with that deal for a really long time and it's very distracting. So you don't want to make that bad step, right? That's the needle that you're trying to thread in the beginning, is you want to make the jump, but you don't want to jump into something bad. So then you never make a decision to jump into something bad, and it just sort of swells, right? So that's where you want to be focused on getting it right. And I think that's, I see it over and over again, where I meet new entrepreneurs or new business owners or real estate investors, and you can tell they're just overcome by all this decision-making and over-analysis and paralysis. But then likewise, you see some people, and man, they've jumped in, and it's like, those guys are they're running for a brick wall. They're going to have major problems down the road. So you want to find that perfect thread of maybe just doing one really good deal in your area of focus, and be okay with it not being like 18 deals in a short period of time, right? Where you're not quite sure how it's going to go. That's kind of the sweet spot, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, it's, they're actually the one end you have the analysis paralysis, the other, rushing in before you know enough. And like I said, there's a medium in there that, and like from aviation, I mean, you memorize, 300, 400, 500 page manuals on aircraft.
Yep.
But you still don't have a feel for it until you're actually out there flying it, right? I mean, you learn so much more on the initial. Same thing with investing, right? You can read all the books and have a great base knowledge, but you're going to learn so much more when you actually make that leap. You should obviously, like you said, have education and have knowledge where you're going in. But once you make the leap, you're going to learn so much more in that first year or so of operation because you don't know what you don't know. Until it comes up, you're solving in real time problems.
And Bill, that's why I loved aviation so much, is because I love the hands-on and the learning. So it's like, you know how like first couple of flight lessons, it's like you walk in there, they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do today. And let's go. And you're like, go where? Go to fly the airplane. It's like, oh, okay. Like we're flying like on the first lesson. And I was like, this is really like that, like hit. That's why I loved it so much, is because you were like learning technical stuff and then going and applying it almost immediately. Mm-hmm. And I feel like real estate could be the same way for a lot of people making that career path change, is find a way to like learn and then go apply as much as you possibly can. And usually that means like finding an operator or somebody doing it and going to their job site and like asking them questions. If you can find that opportunity, that is the ideal, because you can get like really hands-on, like go on a property tour or invest in a syndication and then just look over that person's shoulder for a period of time. Like there's just so many things you can do to like get that hands-on without taking on a huge area of responsibility before you actually, pull the trigger on everything. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ryan, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you and learn more about what you guys have going on?
Sure. My email is ryan@spartan-investors.com. Our website's the same, spartan-investors.com. And then you can catch me on LinkedIn, Ryan Gibson, or Facebook, or the typical social channels. So,
excellent. Well, we'll make links available in the show notes below. Well, Ryan, we really want to appreciate your time and want to thank you for being on the Road Less Traveled show today. We really enjoyed the conversation and wish you continued success.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely.
Ryan, thank you for being on. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like Ryan Gibson on today's show. We'd also like to remind everybody of a couple things that Park Capital Partners has going on. First, we have the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund that is open today to accredited investors. Please check us out. And we also have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, that is a 501c3 nonprofit that we created last year. And a couple things I'll mention briefly about that. First of all, Park Capital Partners funds the operations of that foundation. So all the work donated goes to do its best work, and that is to help other people. Secondly, we donate corporately, we donate individually. And finally, when investors invest with us, we make a donation to honor that investor from a pre-selected list of 15 different charities and let that investor pick that charity, something they care about. So please certainly reach out. Bill and I are happy to talk to anybody anytime. Our website is parkcapitalpartnersllc.com. Please reach out. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.